I mentioned in the introduction, panelists, that part of the Sales Management Association survey, 96% said they use LinkedIn, 80% believe their sales force will be more effective if they embrace social selling and so forth, and yet very little in place of social media strategy. What are the risks here? Andrew, do you want to take the lead on that?
The risk? I don't see any risk actually. I think the challenge we have is besides having adequate training. Can I have a show of hands? How many of you actually feel that you have adequate training in terms of social media in your organization? Can I see your hands up?
There we go.
Yeah, we have about less than 5%. So even with enough training, there is still a challenge from the organization where I think the guidelines and the usage policies are important because I think you have less challenges where the whole organization is not social media savvy. The minute when the organization becomes social media savvy, you have more challenges. You have staff who are overly creative. Yeah, and that may put your brand on a different platform for the wrong reason. So I think it's training, continuous training, social learning. So from social selling to social learning. And second thing, it's about governance. I think those who work in those who work in the governance department will have more challenges now to formulate policies, not to limit your staff, but to give them more freedom and to set the guidelines of creativity. That sounds.
May I comment? These are non-owned channels that we're talking about.
Yes.
So whereas within the organization, marketing-owned channels are well within the control of the business, but can corporations really dictate how people should behave in non-owned channels?
Because social media has not really any moderator, you can't dictate any behavior outside of organization. So in fact, you have to observe and research on the behavior and try to adapt to it. I think that is part of listening skills, that is part of your social media analytics, is to mirror the behavior of your buyer. So, and that again has to come from a change of mindset.
Anything to add, panelists?
I think there's a number of things here to crop up. One of my favorite ones is that whenever you have an evolution or revolution, particularly a technology-based one, is people will still fall into the trap of thinking that technology will fix everything. And so, we spend a lot of time explaining to people that, quite frankly, if you can't sell offline, you won't be able to sell online either. Because, you still need to have fundamental selling skills. The technology is not going to fix that for you. And in fact, it probably just exacerbate it. The other thing, as you were saying, some of the pitfalls is obviously, a lot of sellers, as you go through your selling experience, you have those nightmare sales calls, where you fall flat in your face. But thankfully, generally speaking, it's in front of one or two people. And, you can avoid ever going back there, and you hope that over time that they forget that story and will continue to, tell it at parties. But in social media, the other thing you got to remember is that once you engage online, whatever you say is there pretty much permanently. So again, I go back to the thing that discipline is absolutely critical. And as Marco mentioned earlier, the best salespeople have an incredible amount of discipline, and I think you've got to bring that discipline online. But you also got to remember that if you're salespeople or if you're a seller and you don't have fundamental selling skills that you can apply in an offline world, you're not suddenly going to be able to leverage technology to make up for those shortfalls because it's just not going to happen. And the other thing, and because when we're talking about if you can't sell offline, you can't sell online, somebody else said to me recently, the other thing is that if you don't have really good social graces offline, you can have them online either. So you want to be careful that as you let your people engage in social media, you better make sure that they are skilled in doing it, because otherwise they now have a massive audience to exponentially screw up.
Marco, please.
think one of the challenges that we have in ASEAN is that a lot of the organisations, and I'm not now talking about the MNCs, but a lot of the organisations are still quite traditional, right? They might be hierarchical in structure, they might be family owned, and there's often a generational difference between the people, if you like, leading the companies and those actually, on the coalface doing the daily work, right? I don't think that's too contentious. I think that's a fairly accurate reflection of some of the challenges that we have. Now, that means that actually there is a level of discomfort, sometimes in leadership, right, around what social media is, what you can do. They're not familiar, they don't understand. They don't understand the benefits. To them, it does just mean Facebook or LinkedIn. And why would I want to tweet, that I'm having eggs for breakfast? Who's interested, right? So I think that one of the things is that we've seen, firstly, that you have to understand that social media is really about influence and understanding that the way that influence works two ways. So there are a number of things that you can do in organisations, whether it's things like reverse buddying, reverse mentoring, where you've got younger people in the organisation helping leadership understand that digital native world, what really happens, why it's important, why there's traction, why it can help. I think there's plenty of case studies, there's clearly plenty of books about to be released about social selling, that there are some clear models that can be used, there's some clear ROI, there are some clear indicators now, there's enough fact out there that will help convert people who are perhaps from a world which is more around show me the ROI, show me the metrics, show me why you have to invest, right? They want certainty. Of course, one of the things that social media means is it's uncertain. It's unpredictable. And so I think the way that you can help in organisations bring this to life is to try and make some of that uncertainty more certain, right? And that is through governance, and that is through discipline, and that is through strategy. And strategy doesn't have to be overly complicated. I'm about to do myself out of a job, but it doesn't have. You don't have to employ Accenture or Bain or McKinsey to write your social strategy. Some of it can be quite simple, and it is about starting simple. We've heard a number of comments earlier about listening. I was taught when I first came into consulting that you have, 2 ears, 2 eyes, and 1 mouth. I suggest you use them in those order, in that ratio. And I think that's probably quite a good ratio for how you approach social media.
Mm.
You should listen twice as long as you engage, and you should certainly look probably as long as you listen. So understand first. That will help in terms of the mitigating some of the risks that could occur. That helps to mitigate some of the wildcards that go on. And I think when the wildcards do happen, in a digital world, kind of failing fast isn't necessarily a bad thing. So as long as you understand what's happened. So that idea of taking away the learning about what mistakes you made and not repeating it, putting that back into your governance procedures, right? If you have that governance in place, it does mean that you can quickly act on things that aren't necessarily on message. So I think that you have to get comfortable with the fact that some things won't be perfect and some things will go wrong. And that's okay, providing that you have mechanisms in place to deal with them and catch it.
Thank you. Please, Crystal, go ahead.
So I just have one more point to add, because I think what everyone said is absolutely spot on. I think technology changes really fast. That is undeniable, right? Everything there's always something new happening every day on social media. But fundamental human behavior doesn't change so fast. Fundamental human behavior being the behavior of the buyer, for instance, you want to use social media platforms to become more knowledgeable about the stuff and about skills and about processes within the buying cycle to make better decisions for themselves, for the organization. And I think that's very important because fundamentally, as humans, right, we ought to be better, faster, stronger, wiser. And we are using technology right now to help us achieve all of these goals. So if you can understand that, you can definitely become a great salesperson, whether it's online or offline, and become more efficient in reaching out to these consumers. Because that's what the buyer really wants, I think. Knowledge, and how can you plug the gaps to fulfill their need.